And let's easily do the same for the column A. Just put the logo and the button to see how it works. And then we're going to go back to the actual result with images and stuff. So I already have top, middle, and bottom on column A and column B. So I can go here, and I'm going to... So right now, column A and column C are just divs. But now I'm going to make them a flexbox. When using flexbox, it's hard to understand what these two lines mean. Because they're on the same element, they actually have different... They affect different things. So the WebKit box flex is actually making column A and column C flex within their parent, but the display WebKit box on column A and column C makes them being flexbox, and their children can flex within their location. So this would work, and I would want them to be vertical. I would want them to be vertically aligned. So box orient is going to be vertical. And if I were to go and say, let's put on top, we're going to put, you know what, we can just go here and put an image tag. Image, source, and I think I actually have an image. If I go to images, there's a back and logo. So I can put the logo here, logo.png. And then here would have the back. That would be good enough for testing. Am I missing lack alt attribute? I'm going to not care. Images slash. Guys, if you see any mistakes, just tell me. So, our CSS is almost ready. Let's see what we have. We're not flexing any of the top, middle, or bottom, so it's just going to hang there. But it's going to be a good start. Ooh, yes, it's working. We just dropped the colors because they were in developer tools. So they are here, and we can start flexing them accordingly. And we're going to be done with this demo in a few minutes. OK, so they are vertically aligned. We can say, let's name all of these row as well, so that we can refer to all of them simultaneously. So we can say raw, dot row, dot, and we would want to say for the middle one to flex 1. WebKit box flex. Maybe I should have used removed the WebKit, and it would probably still all work. So it's hard to see here, but this one should be taking the full height. Yes, it is. But it's at the top of it, so it's not really good. So the entire div is actually taking the full space. But now if I want to make the button sit nicely in the center, I would have to make another flexbox. Too many things. Let's change strategies. So we're going to put another row here, and we're going to call it glue. That's how I set up my the demo. So I'm going to make the glue actually expand, and then whatever's going to be left is going to be for the top and the middle and the bottom. So instead of these guys, the middle one expanding, I'm going to do the glue. Does it make sense? OK, we're getting there. It's not aligned horizontally nicely, but it's just a one-line CSS change. So box spec. And you can see the default, or you can, I don't know if you can see. The default is start. So they are at the start of the axis, which is the left side. So I'm going to do, it's this guy. Box align. So it's in the start, or at the end, it's going to be on the right, or in the center, or stretch. And it would actually take the entire width. So if I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say dot row, so all rows would be dash WebKit dash box next line, and then I'll put center. Almost got it. Did anybody see the mistake? Box align. Is that the one? Anybody see the mistake? Is it this guy or this guy? Sets the alignment of the box along the orient axis. So in this case, it's a vertical axis. So this is not what we wanted. We wanted the box align. Is it? Let's see. Let's try to understand. So the div takes the entire width. So that's not good because the div, the image is just sitting in the div. The div is just a regular div. It's not a flexbox or anything. Yeah? Yeah, that would work as well. I'm not going to do it though. You can text align. So if you go here, you can actually say text align. Is it middle? Center? So that will work. But I would not be able to reproduce this for vertical alignment. So I'm not going to do it. I'm going to use our flexbox. So the problem here is that this column is actually taking the full width. So sorry, this one. So this is actually the column, but the row doesn't have to take the entire width. I can actually make this one be a bit smaller. So let's see how we do it. So box pack, by default, it's start. So this one, let's close this guy. So this one is taking the full width. This one does not need to take the full width. It should be, so this column is a WebKit box on its own, and it's vertical. And then this guy should be box align. That is strange. Let's disable this guy for a sec. Yeah, that's the default one. If I don't easily find the answer, we'll skip it. So if we were able to make this a bit smaller in width, like to actually match the content, we can then easily move it to the left, center, or right based on the box alignment. Does anybody spot the issue? What is it? The row, no, the row doesn't have to be a flex box. It is a block though. So let's make it an inline. That would probably do the trick. What is it? Yeah. No, so that's it. So now it's that it's inlined. It's smaller. You see? The width is smaller than this guy. So now if this is, why is it still not going all the way? Oh, it's sorry, we disabled. Even though this one is centered? That's the problem with the live coding. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's in the and it's already in the center, so we got that part. Okay, more or less. Okay, you know what? Let's punt on it. So what I'm going to do now is we were able to get the Flexbox kind of working in some way. So we're going to open the version 1. You can open it yourself, and we're going to take a look. And it's the same thing that we built, maybe the different class names, and it actually have the logo and everything in the right place. So let's take a look at it. Yeah, so we started here. So if you do git checkout one minimal app, so I'm going to do this as well. If you made changes and you want to throw them away, it's git reset. So I'm actually purging everything that we coded. So I'm going to do git checkout now, one_minimal app. So now I got like a whole bunch of files. And let's see what we have. So the HTML is not very different than what we had before. I chose classes here as well. And there's like screen left, and screen center, and screen right. So you can see there's no top div. I actually made the body be a flexbox. And then we have left, center, and right. And then the left has top, middle, and bottom, and a glue. So let's inspect this one. And the CSS is quite obvious. It's kind of like what we did before. OK? And it is working here. So what did we have here? So the body is a flexbox. You see it here. And then the left part is flexing 1. You can see it here. And the right one is doing the same, I imagine. Yeah. And then they have the background colors. And then the center one, where is it? This is the left. Oop. The center one is just 556 pixels by design. So let's drill down into the left part, and we have the top, which is just the image, and we have, with some padding and whatnot, margins. We have the glue that actually flex vertically. So the way we have it here is like we tried ourselves. So this is a WebKit box, vertically aligned. And then these guys are, this is actually using text align, as you mentioned. So then we have the top, the middle, and bottom. Kind of simple. So we got that part right. We got our layout. Of course, later we'll actually want to hide the button and show it as we go, as needed in the app. But at least we have some of the basic infrastructure in place. So let's continue. So we've used WebKit's Flexbox, which is an awesome tool. If you're building an app that's supposed to run on mobile devices, like Androids and iOSs, you're probably good to go. Windows 8 works. So you can use Flexbox now, if that's your target audience. If instead you're just creating a website and you want to support old browsers, then it's not going to be that easy. And you'll probably end up making a lot of hacks to make your visual work. And you've seen the app, the actual NYT app, the New York Times app. It's quite heavy. There's a lot of visual content there, and there's like pixel perfect designs on many of those things. So it's really not that easy to recreate it with nothing but Flexbox. So there's a real standard behind Flexbox, and it's still being drafted. You can contribute to it. You can listen to whatever everybody's picking over there. But you can actually continue in several different avenues here. So one is if what we did right now makes sense more or less, and some things you knew and some things you didn't. So you can look at a few related projects. So first of all is HTML5 boilerplate. So if you're writing a new website for anything, for your site project, that's probably a good way to start. You go into this website, you download HTML, CSS, JavaScript, boilerplate. Everything is set up for you. The doc type, you don't need to know what it means or what's a good value to pick so that it would work across different browsers and it would support IE6. That's really hard to get. So instead, you go into HTML5 boilerplate, you get like a whole bunch of stuff to start with. Now, HTML5 introduced a lot of new tags, and you would want to be able to use those if you want like a search engine to be able to index your pages correctly. So there's like headers in HTML, so you can use a header tag. You don't have to use divs and spans for everything. And if you're not sure what new tags or new features are available, you can just open caniuse.com. And you can see all the different HTML5 elements, all the different CSS. So Flexbox will be here somewhere. Yeah? So these are a lot of features that you can use today on most browsers. We're going to talk about like 5 or 6 or maybe a bit more here. Like offline, how do you make it work? And we'll read some of the docs here. And CSS, as you've seen in this simple app, our HTML was like nothing. It was mostly about the CSS. And CSS has a lot of new features. If you wrote CSS a few years ago, you need to erase some of that knowledge and read the new specs. So CSS3, stuff like flexbox, gradients, transitions, translations, if you want to do, I don't know if you didn't Google like 3D cube, you can find like really crazy stuff in CSS, and you can use them today. And there's definitely going to be a lot of JavaScript involved, so you need to start learning JavaScript. So now we want to start writing our code. But before that, we know we're going to have a lot of JavaScript and a lot of CSS. So we want to break up our code nicely. So we're going to include a library called require.js by James Burke, I think. And it's an awesome tool. It allows you to be able to take your JavaScript code and break it into different files and use something like dependency injection to say, give me this file. I want to include this file here. So you can actually write your code modularly. So in our app, maybe I should have the app designs open. Oh. I'm just going to go up. So in our app, we can have an article be its own module. And when we want to render an article, like just a preview part of it, we want to render it, our page can just require that other file called article preview. And it would then call a method on it, let's say render, and it would render itself. So you can actually disconnect your one code from another, one page from another, and you can actually build classes and whatnot. In the New York Times, we built a lot of JavaScript. Some of our, I think the recently launched mobile website, which I worked on, is running Node.js, which means, again, JavaScript. So there's a lot of code that you write. This is really a good way to handle a lot of code in JavaScript. So, okay. We're going to see how we actually do it. And then I'm just going to show the same for CSS. So CSS, you're going to use something like less or stylus or any of these preprocessors. And just by using a preprocessor will allow you to use a lot of features that are non-existent in CSS. So for instance, you can break your CSS into different files, which is actually supported, but if you go into Google speed test, you would see that they recommend not to use the import statement that comes with CSS, because that would mean that the browser would have to make another request to get another CSS file. Instead, if you use something like a CSS preprocessor, you can actually bundle them all up together when you're done. So your user actually get like one page, but you can code with different pages. And you can use advanced features as well. Okay, so let's see how it goes. So we're going to include require.js, and we're going to still make our JavaScript work with it. We're not going to have any of our articles and whatnot. We're going to save that for later. But for now, our alert would just be living in one file, and that's not going to be this file that get injected into our page. So let's, I'm going to, sorry. Let's open it again. The internet here is a bit flimsy. They ran into a problem. I do not have PowerPoint anymore here, so. Okay, I can start here. So instead of embedding, because we have 30 minutes, instead of embedding, let's just check out the code and we'll take a look at it. So I'm gonna check out this branch with require.js. You can actually do diff if you want. Like you can diff 1 versus 2 and actually see the diffs and see how I changed. But I think it's quite a simple code base, so I might as well like just open it in the browser. Okay. Let me, in the meantime, fix this. I'm not sure if it's gonna. Okay. So our HTML page, you remember what it was before. Let me open that again. So our HTML page had an inclusion for jQuery and one for our reader.js file. So reader.js just had this thing. So when the document is ready, it's going to call this anonymous function, and it's going to alert hello. And it works. And we're going to break it a bit differently. And you might have noticed that the two script tags are using defer. I think the person who was before me mentioned async, so it doesn't actually block the browser from loading. So now I'm going to open the next one. Sorry. Is it this guy? Do you see all the way to the bottom here? Yeah, it's good. OK, so let's see what we have now. When we... sorry. OK, so we have an HTML. It's kind of like what we had before, except now we are loading a different file. The source of this script tag is actually require.js. We have the minified, the non-minified code. And if we want... OK, I'm going to explain, but it's also available on the website. You can actually check out the website. It gives like a brief explanation of how to use it. So in particular, you can use a data-main. You know what? Let's open the website so it doesn't look like magic. How do I start? This is the default project here. OK, so here, it's kind of like this. So you have a script tag. The source is the require.js. They're not using the minified version. And then you introduce a data-main. So data attributes, it's another HTML5 features. If you're accustomed to putting stuff in the DOM, like putting your own classes and own whatever, you can use data attributes, which is easier. They don't clobber, your CSS namespace. Or it's really easy to get them through JavaScript. So it's really handy. So they're using this. So data-main, and this tells require.js, when you finish loading your require.js code, go and fetch me this main file. So scripts main. So in our case, what we have is from JS externals, go back up one folder and go into the JS folder and pick up reader.js. reader.js. And now there is some boilerplate that you need to have in order to use require.js, which is this first and last lines. But besides that, as you can see on line 4, I can actually say var main require, and I'm loading a different file. So my code actually lives in that file. So the hello world is actually in this main.js. So if we open this, so this one actually exports a function. So .fn equal to this anonymous function. So if somebody imports this file, main.js, it can call .fn on it, and it would be able to run this code. The same way I'm doing it here. So when I call give me main.js, I'm actually getting an object back. And that object has a .fn property on it, which is a function. So I can invoke it through here. Does it make sense? Now, the reason that you need to wrap it in this weird something that resembles an anonymous function is because when require.js goes and grabs this file, you don't want the browser to immediately execute this. You want the browser to wait. Why? Because there's another dependency here. It's called main. So before it executes this code base, it needs to go and fetch another code base called main. And only when it gets all the dependencies that you're using, it would just then be able to run them. So that's why it's a function that it would call eventually when it has all the data. And you have, so the require that I'm using here, it's not something that is magically available. It's actually being passed to my function. So I'm getting the require object from require.js, or require method from require.js, and I can actually use it to require our dependencies. Does it make sense? Great. So let's look at it in the browser for a sec. First of all, of course, it's still... Am I on the right folder? Does it work? What is it? Did I make something? Oh, Did I do anything wrong? Oh, okay. I think what it's doing is it's actually, so it's not supporting the file colon // URL. So in this case, we would want to run it as a web server. Does anybody know, like, to actually HTTP that file? Do you know what's the easiest way to run a web server? I use almost the only time I use Python is for it. So python-m simple HTTP server runs a simple HTTP server in the same folder. So if I'm going to run it, it's just going to listen on port 8000, and it's going to serve all the files that are in this folder. So I'm going to do localhost 8000. Yeah, that's kind of nice. And then I click on reader.html. It would actually open this file. And it actually works now with the require.js. And actually spitted a hello. So just to see how it works, you see this is the script that I actually embedded into the page. It actually went and included the reader and main here. So it went and fetched, just by me including this script tag, it actually went and downloaded require. Require code then noticed the data-main saying, please load reader.js. So it just added another script tag into the page with that file that I requested. And then it finished downloading this and inspected the code and saw that this one is actually requiring main.js. So it went and did the same for main.js. And then it noticed that main.js does not use any other imports. And so it was able to actually run all of them on my browser. So that's kind of cool. Okay, so we're getting there. So now we can actually build any folder structure, file structure that we want to support our app. Let's look at CSS. That would be like a simple thing to do as well. Okay. So let's go up. Oh, I forgot to mention some other advanced stuff for require.js. So require.js is awesome. One thing that it's really convenient for, that I'm not going to have in my presentation, and when I get to that point again, you will see that it's just not built correctly. I should have actually used this. So require.js actually allows for plugins. For one of the plugins that it comes, I want to say, like out of the box with, or just on the website, is a plugin for text. Why would you need text as a plugin to your JavaScript file? Why would you ever want to include text in your JavaScript? Because as I mentioned, we're going to render stuff dynamically. So we need HTML snippets to be able to say, okay, spit out this list of articles on the screen. So what I would end up doing in this presentation is actually having HTML in my JavaScript, which is definitely a no-no. But if you use something like a text plugin, you can actually put it in an HTML file and require them. So your JavaScript code actually requires something like an HTML. It's not actually an HTML. It's going to be a JavaScript file, but it will have the content of what you will have in the HTML, the text file. So that's really easy and convenient to work with. Another option that many frameworks use is to embed stuff in your HTML document, but not real HTML data, like not actually putting the tags, but putting it all in a script tag. So putting something in a script tag and then getting the data from the DOM, from the script tag. So that's one thing worth considering. Another one that I didn't show here, we'll talk about that afterwards when we talk about how do I automate my processes, is to use RJS. So you've seen that my browser actually went and brought each file separately. When we want to bundle it all together, we can use RJS, which run on Node. So you need to have Node.js working. And it's just going to read those files same way as require, same way as your browser would. And instead of just loading script tags, it would actually take and bundle all the code. So you can then use it as one big bundle. So our app, the New York Times web app, has one JavaScript file. It's quite big, but it's much, much better than having the same byte size across hundreds of files that we actually have there. And you can actually configure require.js to have packages and whatnot. And if you want to be able to know how to actually write like really advanced JavaScript code, look at the source. Most of the open source frameworks have source readily available there. You can actually read and inspect and see how they do their magic. Okay. Let's move on to the CSS. So, and I think I have this and one more topic, and then we're going to take a break. And then once we come back, we're going to actually start and look at Backbone and start coding our views and models. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to look at 3 with less. Just going to inspect it. Get checkout 3 with less. Let's look at the source. Okay, so now we have that. I think okay. So this is what I had to add to support less. So in my browser, I actually have, I'm including a script tag, the second line here. I'm including a script tag for less. So that's going to import less, the minified code of it. And if you look at the less website, it would tell you that in order to include less file as opposed to regular CSS files, you need to include link to your less files. So the extension you can see here of the href is less. But you also need to tell it rel equal stylesheet/less. So less, after it loads, it actually inspects the DOM, finds this element, and goes and fetches the less file and compiles it in my browser. So it would take a less, something that the browser does not understand, compile and inject CSS code into my browser. Of course, I wouldn't want to use this in production. It means that somebody needs to go and download less and needs to compile stuff on the fly. Instead, I can use less in Node.js or whatever they're using and actually compile my less files into one big CSS file. All I would have to do here is go back, remove those 2 lines, and include my CSS, my output CSS file. So that's quite simple. Okay, let's look at my less file. So we saw how I set up my CSS before. Let's see how I set it up now. So I have, what is it, main or main? No, reader. Okay. So my less file has 2 includes in it. One is vendor prefixes. So one cool feature about less, let's open the website. I'm going to do some justice here. So this is less, and you can see how you can write like better CSS code than what you normally have to do. And one of them is import. Import. Is it? Come on. Yeah. So you can import file. Can import both less and CSS files. So I can load different files. And one that I brought out of the box was vendor prefixes. So you remember that I had to do -webkit- on everything. And for Mozilla, you need to do -moz -everything. And there's a standard way to support Flexbox. So if you want to write this, you've all seen this. If you want to write, where is it? Is it still open? Yeah. -webkit. If you want to write this code on the right, that's just like a lot of boilerplate. So instead, let's have functions and variables and whatnot that you can actually build all of this for you. So if we were just for a brief second to look at here, and we're going to look for flex. Let's look at the other one. Box. Come on. Here. So when you want to do Flexbox, and this is less. This is how you write less. So there's a function called .box, and it accepts 3 parameters, all of which are optional. So if you want orient to be horizontal, you don't need to specify anything. And if you want pack to be start, you don't have to specify. And it would spit out this in the end. So by just specifying .box, I would get all this code to work for WebKit and Mozilla and the standard way for all of these things. And I would get all the 4 CSS declarations already for me. So if I'm going to take a look at now at my main, it's going to be super simple. So on body, I wanted to set the Flexbox done. And this works around the different browsers. And when I wanted to flex, so we saw .flex here. So .flex, by default, flexes all the way through with 1. So I just do .flex here. So it's quite simple. It's quite easy, and it would save me some time. Also, there's like a cool feature here that you can use, which is hierarchy. You can actually scope stuff. So I can say, my screen left and screen right, I want them to use vertical box, which is what we wanted. But I want the glue within the left and right screens to actually flex. So you can see that glue is, I can actually hoist it and put it here, but then there might be another glue class somewhere in my web, my page, and it would like actually take effect on the other one. But by doing it here, it would actually translate in the end to .screen-left .glue. So it would actually find all the glues within my left screen. So that's awesome. It actually allows me to encompass more meaningful code snippets together, which is awesome for CSS. So you can actually start, if you think about it, once we go and build stuff, you can actually build one CSS for the section front and one CSS for the article page. And within the section front, you have the previews. So this can be in its own file, and you can have scopes there, and you can use simple names. You don't have to prefix everything with article dash main dash header dash something. You can actually use shorter names just by the place that you're embedding them in. Okay. That was quite easy. And I think we have 10 more minutes to talk a bit about tests, and then we'll take a break and start coding when we get back. So there's a lot of less features that are nowhere existent in CSS. You've seen just a handful of them, and you can see they can save you a lot of time. And you as a developer, you want to maintain as little, the smallest amount of lines of code that you can. So if it means using less and using .flex to save you writing like 12 lines instead, that's awesome, because that's all you would check out into your code repo. In the end, you're not going to care about the rest. You're not going to care about less and how it's implementing that under the hood. All you need to maintain is this one line. And again, we said in the end, when you want to actually deploy it to production, you can actually use the compiler and package it all in a regular CSS file. Any questions so far? Okay, I think we'll have like a few minutes, like 3 minutes to have another question or some questions before we go into a break. So tests is not appropriate everywhere. There's some, if you have a small front end, like we're going to build like a 2 pages worth of content, sometimes it's just a hassle to set up an automatic testing environment. Maybe a manual is better. Maybe it doesn't make sense to have any tests at all. But us as developers, by default, we don't want to have tests, which is not a good thing. If you want to support a system, if you want to maintain the code, spending a bit more time and doing some tests will save you a lot of time later. I'm not going to go into the benefits of it. There's like workshops just about writing tests. So what we're going to do is we're going to just show one test. So for that, you will need to actually, so the way we're going to have tests is we're going to use a Node plugin, that's called, a Node framework that's called Mocha, mocha.js. If you check out, sorry, let's skip a bit. If you check out 4, which is where the test's already existing, and you try to run anything here, you will see that it complains that so first of all, you need to have Node. So if you do node-v, you should have any Node version installed. I think 0.6 or above is okay. And then because so I have my code, which is like one simple test, but it uses a lot of frameworks, so Mocha and some other stuff. In order to have it, you need to run npm install. If I run it, it would simply finish because I already downloaded everything. That's the Node modules folder that you see here. But if I were to actually look at the, let's try to understand what we have here. So now we're done with all of our skeleton app. So what do we have here? So first of all, where am I? Okay, so it starts here. We have a package.json. If you're writing Node, you always have a package.json file that specifies how to, for instance, start my server. Okay? Right now, we're using simple HTTP server. No, nothing crazy. I moved everything to the folder, to a front-end folder, so that we have the front-end there, we have the server somewhere, we have our tests in a different folder. So if you go into front-end, that's just everything we built so far. But if you want to test my front-end, I actually run an npm package that I installed when I ran npm install under Mocha. So node modules, Mocha, there's like a bin folder within it and Mocha. And then it runs everything within the tests folder in the end, the last parameter. So if we open the test folder, there's only one file. And this is the syntax of how you use Mocha, and I embedded it with require.js. So it actually requires main. So you can see here, it requires main. It has to traverse some folders and whatnot. It picks up the main, and then it expects main.fn to be a function. So if you remember, if we go into our front-end JS main, there's a .fn property here that is actually a function. So this simple test actually tested. So let's run it. Let's see how it works. So if I go run here, I have scripts test front-end. So I can do npm run script. And then you run this. It actually runs this command. So I could have just copied and pasted this one, but it's just a simple way to get to the same place. So if I'm going to run this, it's going to run and it's going to say main export fn correctly. And it passed. The test actually passed. But if I were to go and change anything here, so if I were to say, rename something, or, it should fail. Unexpected, undefined to be a function. So it's quite convenient to be able to do all of this. Or if somebody by mistake go here and put like 2, it's going to complain. Expected 2 to be a function. So this is just the basics for us to be able to actually write tests. When we're going to write, after the break, we're going to write a model. We're going to write a test against the model. We're going to write a view. We're going to be able to test it in Node.js. So the idea is a view is rendering something on our screen, normally in the browser. But here, Node.js, we're going to require the same view, and we're going to render it all in memory. So we're going to have a DOM element in memory with everything that has to be there, like the list of articles. And we can introspect it, and we can see, okay, does it have an image tag? Does it have a link to that URL that I'm expecting? So I can write simply my test. It will survive the change of time because I can move the link to the URL from here to here, but I expect my output to have a link to that thing. You can go even further and write like actual visual testing, but that's probably an overkill in this particular instance because the design might change later. But I know that companies like Facebook actually take a screenshot for every build that they're making, and they're comparing it with a previous build. So if you're making a change here, and it somehow affects the screen here, they know about it on the visual level. That's awesome. I think now is a good for us to take a break. Do you have any questions? We have 2 more minutes. And if not, I'll meet you in 12 minutes. Anybody has a question so far? We're going to do Backbone after the break, and we're going to look at Backbone, and we're going to write Backbone. Yes, question here.
Why are you using require.js to include things like jQuery and your less?
The question was, why am I not using require.js to load less and jQuery and whatnot? I think I used it here just because of the way we built the presentation. Yeah, you can definitely include everything through require.js. You can tell require.js where is my jQuery if you want to host it on your server. I know there's a way to specify go to CDN, and if it fails, go and bring it from my server as well.